Over the long history of American open-wheel racing, many races have been run, almost too many to count. And with over 100 races being scheduled each decade, it's an inevitability that plans will fall through for a few races, and then those races will be cancelled. And in this video, I'll be going over these cancelled races and the stories behind them, the exciting races that we lost, or the mediocre ones that we are probably better without. These are the Indycar races that never were. In the early history of American open-wheel racing, races were sanctioned by AAA, and in 1903, the first official championship was held. There are many non-championship races held, but they aren't as well documented, so for the next decade, there is doubtless one, or two, or even more races that fell through, either through unpreparedness, bad tracks, or just bad promoters. But I can't discuss them much. Further, due to the previously said lack of documentation. The first widely documented, cancelled IndyCar race is the 1917 Indy 500, in which it was planned for late May of that year, but was not held due to the United States joining World War I, and during the war, the Speedway served as a landing strip and refueling station known as the Speedway Aviation Repair Depot. The annual tradition of the 500 then continued at the Speedway after the end of the war in 1919, and even continued during the Great Depression years under the leadership of new owner Eddie Rickenbacker up until 1942, when the 500 that year was cancelled due to the joining of the US into the Second World War. Rickenbacker offered the services of the Speedway to the government, but they declined, causing the Speedway to fall into disrepair during the years of the war. Rickenbacker eventually sold the Speedway to Anton Holman Jr. in 1944, and the Speedway was repaired and the 500 was run in 1946 after an absence of 5 years, and the race has been strong ever since, running every year up until the present. The races for the next few decades were run pretty stably under the leadership of USAC, IndyCar's new sanctioning body, until 1979 when the USAC and CART split, tore American open-wheel racing in two, with drivers and tracks having to choose between which two series to run, both having separate calendars. That year, the rounds at Mosport Raceway and Rockingham Speedway on the CART calendar were cancelled due to promoter issues, and the next year, in 1980, 6 races on the USAC schedule were cancelled. The races at Milwaukee, Texas, Road Atlanta, Mosport, Charlotte, and Talladega. Yes, that's Talladega. As CART took the upper hand in the split, and the two series merged, reuniting IndyCar racing once again. A race scheduled for the CART schedule in 1980 was planned to be run the next year when the two series reunified. The race was planned to be run in Chicago at a street circuit on Lakeshore Drive alongside Lake Michigan. The race never came to fruition, but racing has since returned to downtown Chicago, with NASCAR planning to hold their first race in the same location this year in 2023. No more cancelled races occurred in a period of almost 2 decades, until 1999, during the period of the second IndyCar split, which the planned season-ending race in Hawaii fell through. The official name of this race was the Hawaiian Super Prix, the project of Dick Rowe III, a promoter who had been trying to get a race in Hawaii for over a decade. The race was scheduled as the last race of the 1999 CART season, albeit not a points-paying race, as it was an exhibition race in a format reminiscent of NASCAR's All-Star Race, compete with the large payout of $5 million prize for the winner of the Super Prix. The track was located on the Kilauea Airport and was given a favorable review by Mauricio Gugelmin, who took a few laps around the track in late 1999. But as the months led up to the planned running of the race, problems compounded. The late announcement of the race proved too little time for sponsors to make deals. The major TV stations such as NBC and ABC couldn't cover the race due to scheduling conflicts with football. The event was poorly promoted and advertised to the public, causing ticket sales of under 20,000. A labor dispute by the local dock workers also slowed down the delivery of material to build the track. And all of these problems compounded to lead to the announcement of the cancellation of race being issued on October 19th, 1999, less than a month before the race was planned to be running, causing quite a big PR disaster for the CART series. Not long passed before the next cancelled race on the CART calendar, with the 2001 race at Texas Motor Speedway, the Firestone Firehawk 600 being canceled due to driver safety concerns, with cars going upwards of 230 miles per hour on qualifying day, and due to the fact that Texas Motor Speedway is a high bank track. This speed generated upwards of 5 Gs during most of the lap for the drivers' bodies to withstand. Drivers reported momentary blackouts while driving at that speed, and after a failed attempt to utilize Texas's road course configuration, the race itself was initially postponed for a later date, but after a place couldn't be found for it on the kart calendar, the race was cancelled. A full kart season in 2002 was run without any cancellations, and in 2003, it looked like the same would happen, until when the time came in early November that year for the final round of the season at California Speedway. A large wildfire, named the Old Fire, burned in the forest north of Fontana where the track was located, and winds sent the majority of the smoke south, covering the track. The event was initially postponed on October 28th that year due to concerns of driver and spectator safety due to the extremely bad air quality, but the next day, when it was clear the event couldn't go on for at least a few weeks due to the smoke, the event was officially cancelled, bringing an anticlimactic end to the 2003 kart series as a whole, giving Paul Tracy the title. Also, this was the anticlimactic end of the kart series in general, with it reorganizing and rebranding to Champ Car the next year. For Champ Car's few years of existence, quite a few planned races fell through, and the first race to do this was a planned race on the streets of Ansan in South Korea. In 2004, it was announced that Indycar would be racing in South Korea on the streets of the city of Ansan, and groundbreaking of construction of the track began in February of the next year for the planned first ever Korean Champ Car race that October. But as the date loomed, circuit construction fell behind schedule, and then in September of that year, the Champ Car series announced that the race would not happen in 2005 due to operational and contractual issues with the promoter, but they would aim to run it in 2006. But that also never came to be, and IndyCar hasn't returned to Korea since. But Champ Car attempted to return to Asia the next year, in 2007, with a planned race at the Zhuhai circuit in China. The FIA, which held the Chinese Grand Prix at a circuit in another Chinese city, Shanghai, stated that Champ Car could hold a race at Zhuhai in May, so did not draw attention from the F1 race, but the race promoter couldn't schedule a race then, and when a date in October was proposed, the FIA rejected it, and Champ Car, wanting to remain in good favor with the sanctioning organization, cancelled the 2007 running of the race. 2 more races in 2007 were planned but never saw the green flag drop due to numerous reasons. The Grand Prix of Arizona, held on the streets of downtown Phoenix, looked all set to go forward, with a track layout finalized and Will Power and Simon Pagenaud driving a Champ Car on a closed-down street downtown to test the noise disruption levels to the city, but then the primary sponsor pulled out, leaving the race with not enough money to continue, and dooming the race to cancellation. The other race in the 2007 schedule to be cancelled was the previously successful Denver Grand Prix, which was held for the last 5 years in a street circuit around the Pepsi Center, but plans for a 6th race fell through due to the scheduling conflicts with the stadium the track ran around. The race was planned to be held again in 2008, but then Champ Car reunified with IndyCar and ending the second IndyCar split and leaving Denver off the calendar ever since. The now reunified IndyCar series planned to return to China in 2012, 5 years after Champ Car's doomed bid to race there, with about as much success. The race was scheduled for the 19th of August that year on a street circuit in the city of, and I'm sorry if I pronounced this wrong, Qingdao, China, but then the promoter informed the series that the race would not go forward that year due to the fact that they were looking for an alternate location to run the race, but they eventually were never successful in their bid to bring IndyCar to the country. In 2015, a race on the streets of South Boston was announced to take place the next year, with the authorities granting IndyCar permission to run the race, but then issues with the promoter and the proposed track led IndyCar to relegate the planned date to a race at Watkins Glen, and in 2021, the CEO of the race, John F. Casey, pleaded to wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, money laundering, and filing false tax returns, giving us some insight into the reasons the race never went through. Now, for the most recent IndyCar races that have been cancelled, we have to go back to 2020, to the beginning of March and the beginning of the pandemic outbreak that year. The IndyCar series announced on March 12th they would run the St. Petersburg Grand Prix without spectators and extra personnel due to the ongoing pandemic, but the next day the series announced that all races through April, including the round at St. Pete, would be cancelled. These races were the races at Barber, Coda, Long Beach, Belle Isle, and St. Petersburg. Also, along with these races, the races at Richmond, Toronto, Portland, and Laguna Seca later in the year were cancelled due to COVID regulations in those regions. Ever since, no more IndyCar races have been suddenly cancelled like the ones mentioned beforehand, probably for the good, as most races nowadays can be classified as must-watches. I can't say the same for some mentioned before, as some of the street circuits, previously discussed, are absolutely dreadful, with mainly 90-degree corners, narrow straights, and our far better left cancelled for it. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this venture into the cancelled races of IndyCar's past, and I'll see you next time.